LJ here for LJ Lit Reader, and another episode. I am coming back to you with a book tag. It's something I found online. I thought I'd give it a go. It looked quite fun. It's called the End of Year book tag, and I believe it was created by a person called Ariel Bissett. So credit to that person. Thank you for a great book tag. And here I go with some questions. Yeah, I apologise for how much I'm probably going to ramble. I'm going to answer the questions, but we're on a bit of a time schedule because my son is currently having a nap, and if he wakes up then we may get cut short, so please bear with me and let's see how I do. So the first question is, are there any books you started this year that you need to finish? Now, I am the kind of person that starts a book with the intention of finishing it. However, there have been 3 occasions this year where I have DNF'd it. If I am not going to finish it at the moment, I am DNFing it because life is too short to have a series of books on your shelf that you've read a bit of to pick up and try again. And this is purely because it can get really confusing, and also I think it ruins the book a bit if you're going to just read a little bit of it, put it down for forever and then pick it back up again. If you're going to read a book, read it from the beginning, and if you've DNF'd it or whatever, pick it back up again, start it from the beginning again, because there's no point trying to pick up from where you've left off if you've left that book sat there for a year. Do you know what I mean? There are 3 that I DNF'd this year, so I'll talk about those because they're books that I have started and I haven't finished. First one was The Swimming Pool by Louise Candlish, and I had read one of her books previously called Our House. I think it's called Our House, and I hated it, and I read it for book group. It was not my cup of tea, so when I picked up The Swimming Pool I had a little bit of dread in my tummy because the premise seemed quite cool, but the execution, again, I don't know if you've seen any of my other videos, but you know I don't like midlife crisis bullshit. So yeah, The Swimming Pool is midlife crisis bullshit. That was not for me, and I think I managed about 50 pages and then it went into the bin because I've actually deleted it off my Kindle. The second book was one I believe is a little bit controversial, but I have obviously not been part of the book community to be part of this controversial topic, but I did start The Night and Its Moon by Piper CJ purely because I am a TikTok addict, and again I said that it's something I want to get rid of in my life, so see how we go. But I had been following Piper CJ on TikTok and I thought she was like quite quirky, quite fun. I liked kind of where her TikToks were going, so I had actually downloaded the book to read. I think I got about 100 pages in and I found it really hard going. There's a lot of editing issues there. I don't know whether these have been addressed or not because I know she's self-published, but I found it quite verbose and purple prose, and she used a lot of words where a few less would have done. It wasn't really my cup of tea. I lost interest. I persevered to 100 because obviously I had loved her TikToks, but you know, it just didn't toot my horn, and I really hope that this author resolves those editing issues. I don't know the nature of the drama, but I believe there's something happened on Goodreads at the beginning of the year. When it was published, I think maybe that the editor had said something rude to someone. I know there was a lot of stuff on TikTok about it, but again, I didn't really follow that part. All I know is that I read part of the book, didn't like it, and felt really sad and let down. But at the end of the day, you know, these things happen. You know, every book isn't going to be for every person, and everyone has a different writing style, and I'm sure in modern age lots of people who wrote the classics probably could have done with editing. Victor Hugo comes to mind. You know, if she has some editing issues, maybe if it gets re-released I might try again, but as it stands, it wasn't really my cup of tea, and I'm not going to persevere with something purely because it ticks inclusive boxes of having a bisexual main character, etc, etc. I think that's how it was sold. I was more interested in the fantasy element of it, but I did hear that some people thought it was a bit of a Witcher ripoff. I haven't read The Witcher, I haven't watched The Witcher, so I can't comment on that either. So I don't know, nothing really bad to say about her, just it was just quite heavy going and I lost interest and it wasn't my cup of tea. The last one of which was Intuition by Allegra Goodman, which I have discussed on my part 2 October wrap up, so I'm not going to talk about it again because I had some thoughts and they weren't very nice, and yeah, let's just leave it at that really. Question 2. Do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? actually currently busy planning my December reading. I kind of feel like I missed the boat with Halloween, and I let everyone down with my lack of Halloween content. Obviously I started my channel right when it was all happening, so being a bit hard on myself. But December, I've got some plans. I want to do some winter themed Christmas type reading next month. I'm desperate to read the 6th book of the Outlander series, the Breath of Snow and Ashes. As Outlander as a rule, I find quite autumnal in general, because a lot of the time travelling elements, and the first book in particular, was set in autumn because she bumped into a celebration for Samhain, which is around the Halloween time. So I mean, I find that quite autumnal. I want to read the 6th one. I'm going to try and shoehorn this in and say that's what I want to be reading next month. I do have a lot of Christmas books that I'm planning on reading, and I have ambitious to be read lists at the moment, considering I also have a 2-year-old who is a nightmare, and I think he hates me. But I mean, maybe that will change soon, I don't know. End of November, beginning of December, I am hoping to have read, or at least read most of, the 6th Outlander book. I've switched my camera around so I can see what I'm doing, because I keep fucking up when I have it the other way around, and I'm finding myself in the corner really distracting. So if my eyes wander a bit, I'm really sorry. I need to get used to staring at one particular focal point, so yeah, bear with me. Question 3. Is there a new release you're still waiting for? Now, this isn't something that I generally a person about. I read books months after they're released, and I don't generally keep track of when they're going to be released. And so because of my habit of buying Kindle books on sale, which I'm going to try very hard not to do this year coming up, I generally am late to the show. However, I have actually read several books that were released this year. I'm quite impressed with that. The first one was The Dead Romantics, which I've read recently. Beyond the Wand by Tom Fulton. Set on You by Amy Lee. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Everyone knows my thoughts on that one. I'm Glad That My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy, and Book Lovers by Christina Henry. It might even be a completely different name, and I've just made this up. So I might have like a little thing appear to just edit who that book is by, because I can't remember. And I didn't write it down because I'm an idiot and I just wrote the titles. Question 4. What 3 books do you want to read before the end of next year? Well, I've already banged on about The Breath of Snow and Ashes, so I'll skip that one. But the other ones were that I was given. This is a book by my friend at work, and it's called The Duncton Woods. And it's about moles. She's given me 3 books about these mole people. I'm going to give it a go. I promise to check it out. It's 80s fantasy. I haven't actually read 80s style fantasy books, so I'm actually kind of intrigued. So I'm hoping, if I'm not too ambitious, to do my Christmas list, which I've got, and I'll do a video about that when it comes to the end of the month, my Duncton Wood books, and the Diana Gabaldon book, Breath of Snow and Ashes, which I keep banging on about in this video. Question 5. Is there a book that could still shock you and become your favourite book of the year? I am overly optimistic about 2 books, both of which I'm still in the process of reading, so we'll see how I go. But the first one is Pandora, and the second one is The Left-Handed Booksellers of London. I'm hoping that one of those will inspire me to think, oh yes, and I don't know if it'll knock my reigning champion off though. The 3 books that are currently on my absolute top of the 2022 list are Beartown by Frederick Backman, Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, and Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer, or Foer. I may be mispronouncing that. Those 3 I loved. I read Beartown and it had me in tears, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And at the moment, I would say Beartown is like my #1 top book of 2022. Love Hypothesis is a very close second, because I really fancy Adam Driver, and that was the only person I could think about when I was reading this. And Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, I listened to the audiobook and my heart broke. And I honestly, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much if I'd have read it, but listening to it with a sort of a little boy's voice, I emotional just thinking about it. Question number 6. Have you already started making reading plans for 2023? I've kind of touched on that. 2022 as a reading year for me has been a whole new ball game of madness. I'm blindsided by the amount of books I have read this year. We're hitting on 80 books now. I know for some of you that might not seem too much, but up until this year I used to average on between 35 and 50 books a year. So the fact that I've completely gone past that, and I used to listen to audiobooks as well, so I don't know what's happened this year. The only thing I can think of is, that I've made some changes to my reading habits. I've been tracking my reading goals since 2014. I've had a Goodreads account since I joined a book group to keep track of what I'd been reading, and my target, is ordinarily 50, and I hit 50. If I don't hit 50, then life happens. This has just been bonkers. I don't know if I'll hit a target of 100 this year, but having done this year, I feel like I could make 100 my target for next year quite comfortably. I think that there were times when I didn't read and I could have read more, so I'm hoping that maybe that might be a thing, but I've never had 100 as a target before in my life. But I would say a large part of that is down to Storygraph. Amazingly enough, I switched over to Storygraph in the middle of last year, and I thought it was a very interesting sort of niche. It's kind of taken all the bits of Goodreads that I actually liked and gone with it. Like, I wasn't that bothered about the book community on Goodreads or giveaways or any of that rubbish, but what I did like was knowing my stats, and Storygraph really gets that itch. Very satisfying knowing what you're reading and the genres and how many pages you're reading, and then you become a bit addicted to the analytics of the matter, basically. And then I coupled that by getting a book journal. So I downloaded a book journal from Etsy by a lady who was on TikTok called Cassie Reads. I think her channel shut down, but I do follow her on Storygraph, and I would love to say this book journal was life-changing for me and I loved it, and thank you so much for putting it on Etsy. It's been amazing. Like, would I have the time to make one by hand like you did? Probably not, but to be able to edit a PDF, yes, I have lots of time to do that. And so Storygraph and a book journal, I have been tracking how many pages I've been reading. And when you know that a certain colour is because you've read less than 25 pages in a day, you find excuses to pick your books up. So I'm suddenly really mindful of how much I'm reading. I'm really mindful of the days that I don't read, and I feel guilty. It's very strange, very guilty. I have taken my audiobook listening to a whole new level. What happened is prior to this year, I obviously was on maternity leave and everything, but I used to work 5 days a week, and on those 5 days a week I was in office and I was at front reception, and you couldn't even listen to a radio without it being a bit dodgy because copyright issues and having to have licenses, etc. So because I needed to be there to answer the phone, answer the door, be present, I would just be at work. Well, this year's a bit different because now I work from home 2 days a week. I don't have a reception to manage, and the phone hardly rings because COVID is bitch. In order to focus, I have a book on in the background, so I'm able to sort of blast through an audiobook once a week, depending on how big an audiobook I've picked. It's been really productive for me, and also it's made me listen to books that maybe I wouldn't have read. The Wall, for example, I totally would not have read that. It was completely out there. So maybe I might listen to a few more like thriller type books just to get me into that genre a bit more, because I'm not a fan of thriller, not a fan of crime, and maybe that's something I'll explore next year. I don't know. But I'm going into the new year knowing that I've made these changes and I kind of like where it's led me to. I've got, plans. I mean, I made a bloody YouTube channel, for Christ's sakes. I think that's kind of a big deal for 2023, knowing that now I have targets to meet and releasing videos and actually talking about my thoughts. And I'm finding it really refreshing talking about the things that I'm reading to people that probably understand what I'm talking about, because most of the time my husband gives me the blankest look if I tell him about what I'm reading. So the only way I've gathered his interest by going, oh, I've read another book that's this many this year, and he's like, oh, well done, but he's ragingly dyslexic and reading is just not his thing. So it's nice to have some people that will appreciate what I'm talking about for a change. Plans for 2023. Let's see, what things am I thinking about? I'm thinking about maybe joining some of these reading challenges that other booktubers do. That would be really interesting to see what kind of things I could manage. I do find it quite restrictive to follow book tags and things like that, and I did do a story graph challenge this year, which I'm failing miserably because I just am finding it restrictive, and I don't know why, because I was part of a book group for God knows how long. I was part of a book group for like six years or so, and we used to read 2 books a month, and I used to read them, and I was restricted to those books. But apparently when I set myself a private challenge, that I get a bit resentful of myself. Hoping to maybe like try out some of those reading sprint videos I've been seeing. I mean, I don't know how many people would want to actually watch me sit and read, because I'm an overweight 30-something-year-old woman, and I'm not particularly nice to look at. But I mean, it might be nice to have them on. I don't even look at them, but I kind of can hear someone turning pages or like have some gentle music on, and it's kind of nice to feel like I'm motivated because that person's reading, maybe I should be reading. And so maybe that might be something nice I could do. I also have a lovely fluffy dog, which is hiding at the moment. Ready? Right, hello. Say hello. Hello. Look at the camera. There you go. This is Monty. Monty is my dog. He is very wet because he had a bath earlier. We went for a walk. Oh, what have you knocked over? We went for a walk earlier and he got a bit muddy, and my son got very muddy too. So between the two of them, they both were a bit of a pickle. But Monty's had a bath. He smells delightfully of wet dog and doggy shampoo. Maybe in a reading video you might like to see me and my dog. I mean, that's a niche, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe we could look at some themes for months. I'd quite like to do a Regency romance month. Maybe that would be like a February thing, because I like my Regency romance trash novels. Well, and I call them trash, it's probably offensive. But like, they're not highbrow. I mean, I would feel embarrassed to talk about it in public. So, I mean, I'm going to talk about it on a YouTube channel instead. Maybe that's more... Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. I have an enormous TBR, and as I said at the beginning, I'm hoping to avoid buying any new books. I've got about 300 books on my Kindle. I've got about 200 books on my bookshelf. I can't justify buying books, especially with all the bills going up and energy prices being a bit scary. We're very lucky that so far, it's not affected us overly so, but I am conscious that other people maybe, we're all in it together. I kind of would like to look at other ways to like read new books without actually buying them. So what I have done is I took my son to the library yesterday. We had a bit of an adventure, and the little shit decided to pull all of the books off the shelf and onto the floor, and then ran away laughing. 2-year-olds! Gotta love them. It was embarrassing. But we joined the library, and when I was at the library, they were talking about an app called Libby, which I'd heard other people talk about. But I actually thought Libby was American, so I was a bit like, oh, yeah, we never get that. But it isn't. You can use it in this country too, in the UK. So you download the Libby app and you link it to your library card, and then you can have ebooks, magazines, newspapers and audiobooks via the Libby app. So that's really good. So I'm hoping that would be a way of discouraging me from buying new books, because when there's something that I really need to read and I just can't help myself, I will go and see if I can like reserve a copy or something. Obviously, a lot of library books are hardback, so that's something that's going to cause discomfort. But I mean, ebooks, you know, that's a thing. I like my Kindle. Reading targets for each month. I think, you know, it'll be nice to look at some videos about how to fit in reading when you've got a busy schedule, because I know that a lot of people have a lot more time on their hands than maybe the average working person. I mean, if you're working 5 days a week and you then have to come home, cook a dinner, sort out your kids, you know, do the laundry, sort out the house, you know, things, life, admin, you know, get in the way, you know, even fitness goals and things like that, everything gets in the way of reading. So we're going to look at some ways that I managed to read, considering I've got a 2-year-old, and he's an attention seeker. He likes my attention. It might be a nice thing to explore, you know, tips and ways to encourage you to read, or how to read when you've got life that's manic and busy. Might look at a couple of videos doing that. I'd quite like some constructive criticism and feedback as to what kind of things you think I would fit into. Not necessarily, you know, tell me that I'm shit, like I know that. Like explore what kind of videos would fit my personality, because, you know, I'm blunt, I'm grumpy, I'll tell you what I think, and I'm not a good looking person, so, you know, I'm not in it for the good aesthetics either. I haven't got all of the pretty things, and I find it hard to take pretty pictures of things, because who's got the time to fart about putting books in a certain way to make them look pretty on Instagram? I mean, I just do it all on Canva because it looks nicer. And then I sit there for an hour sort of fiddling around with that instead. Tell me what you think I'd be good at, and we can explore videos that we can look at doing in the new year, and, you know, what kind of things, you know, we could look into. I don't want to copy other people. I want to be new. I want to be different. But I know I'm not new, and I know I'm not different, so I'm probably rehashing everything. But oh, for fuck's sake, got carried away there. But, you know, please tell me kind of things you'd like. You know, I know that I've got a very small channel at the moment, very small following, so it's all very novice and new to me, but like, let's go on an adventure together. What do you think? Let's do it. Anyway, I've rambled on enough. The End of Year Book Tag by LJ Lip Reader. Woo! I did it. Enjoy, and I'll see you again soon for another video. Goodbye, everyone.